Hi, I'm Bhavesh, and in today's video, we are going to look at Python functions. So let's begin. So let us head over to tutorials point where we can navigate to Python and functions. Yeah, so here we have a page for Python functions. So let's go through it as we'll try to understand what are Python functions. This will also teach us the fundamentals of functions. What are functions in any programming language of any kind? It does not have to be Python. So we will also understand the basic concept behind functions. And we will also look at the detailed way of doing or creating a function in Python. So let's start. So what is a function? So as the article says that the Python function is a block of organized reusable code that is used to perform a single related action multiple times, and it provides modularity and a high degree of code reusing. Now, why would we need code reusability? Now, it is obvious that when you write programs or when you do programming, when you write some certain lines of code, you would want to reuse those lines. So for example, if I have a function for calculating an addition, so if I'm adding two numbers, I'm not going to write the same line or the same set of lines required. So a better example would be a little bit of a complex task, like for example, uh, calculating or converting the temperature from Fahrenheit to degree Celsius. Now I have a formula to convert my temperature from Fahrenheit to degree Celsius. Let's see what is the formula. So Fahrenheit to Celsius formula is this, where for example, if you have 32 Fahrenheit, so it goes here 32, and this is a static number. So if I have 100 Fahrenheit, for example, so what my formula is going to be is 100 minus 32 into 5 divided by 9, which gives me 37.7 degrees Celsius. So this is a static formula, or this is a predetermined formula of how the conversion is going to happen. Now, suppose if I know this formula and if I convert this formula into some programming, any programming language code, if I create and if I write my programming language logic in my uh, program. Now, if I want to calculate Fahrenheit into degrees Celsius at multiple places throughout my application, let's say if I am creating an application of a map, or if I have a map with different menu options and I want to show the user the value in degree Celsius, but I'm getting my value in Fahrenheit from a source. So to convert, I would be using the same formula. So it makes no sense for me to write the same formula or to write the same logic at 10 different times, at 10 different places. I do not want to repeat the same logic. So the best thing to do is to put the same code into a function, and that will provide us with modularity or code reusability. So what will happen is the same formula that is written once will be able to be called from multiple places and used elsewhere. So let's go ahead. So then the article goes on to say that it is a top-down approach towards building and processing logic involving defining blocks of independent reusable functions. A Python function may be invoked from any other function by passing required data. So you can assume or you can understand that a Python function can be called from other functions also. So not just Python, any other programming language, if you consider a function, can also be called from another function. So you can have multiple reusable code blocks where one code block is called from another code block. And it is a definite top-down approach where once you call the function, whatever logic that is written inside the function gets executed one by one. And the Python function may be invoked from any other function by calling the required data. So in our case, parameters or arguments. That is, we are providing some input data to the function. So in our Fahrenheit to degree Celsius case, the input is the value in Fahrenheit. So we are providing it a value in Fahrenheit, and in response, we are getting a value in degree Celsius. So this is a return or the answer, and this is the value that we are providing as an input to the function. That is the Fahrenheit value. So we have given a simple diagram. The called function returns its result back to the calling environment. So the called function. So from wherever in your program you'll be calling the function. So if you're calling conversion from Fahrenheit to degree Celsius. It will convert it into degree Celsius and it will return this 37.7 or whatever the on the fly computed value is. It will return it back to the place where it is called from. So they have given a diagram of one function being called from another function. So for example, function one. So as we'll see ahead, def is nothing but a keyword for definition. So we are defining the function, the def function one. So we'll go into the details of how a function is defined later on. So this diagram shows that from function 1, we are calling function 2. Function 2 gets executed. All the code statements that are there in function 2 will get executed one by one, and the control will be returned back to the place where it was called from. We will go back to the call of function 2. We'll go to the end, and then the function 1 will be returned. So this is a basic explanation of what are functions and specifically functions in Python. So let's go ahead. The title is types of Python functions. So there are different types of Python functions. There are some built-in functions, there are some functions defined in built-in modules, and there are user-defined functions. So the function that we talked about, that is writing our own code to convert Fahrenheit value into a degree Celsius value. This is going to be a user-defined function because we are going to write our formula. However, there may be this function inbuilt into Python or in some other library, third-party library. But if we write our own function, it is going to be a user-defined function. But there are built-in functions in Python also that comes with the language. They are part of the base language. So for example, print. Print is a very popular basic function that you learn when you start learning Python. So print is a inbuilt function in Python. So length or sum, these are inbuilt functions and functions defined in built-in modules. There are some additional modules in Python that which you may import additionally when you're creating the program. So these functions you would be able to use these functions without importing any other library or any other module. But there are some more functions which are also usable by importing built-in modules. So the standard library also bundles a number of modules. One example which I can think of is OS. So OS is a module which provides functions for operating system. So if you want to execute operating system level commands, you will be able to import the OS module and then execute the functions which are there inside the OS module. And we have already covered user-defined functions. These are the functions that you create yourself. So let us understand how can we define a Python function. So we can define custom functions to provide the readability. We can provide the required functionality. Here are simple rules to define a function in Python. So let us look at the rules. So the first rule is that the Python function should start with def. So when you use def at the beginning, def stands for definition. You can have keyword def and then the name of the function and then parameters. The first point is that the function should start with the def followed by the function name and then a parenthesis. Any input parameters or arguments should be placed within these parentheses, and you can also define parameters inside the parentheses. So there is a parenthesis that is opening bracket and closing bracket. So any parameters that you want to pass. So parameters are basically input values to the function. So in our case, we have Fahrenheit. So 100. 100 is an input value for us because we are converting 100 into degree Celsius. We are taking this 100. 100 might not be static. When the program executes, you can pass any other dynamic value to the function. So the second rule says that the parameters or the arguments should be placed within these parentheses. And we can also define the parameters inside these parentheses. Next line says that the first statement of the function can be an optional statement, the documentation string of the function or doc string. So the first line, so this is a convention. It is not mandatory. Your code will run properly without writing this, but this is a doc string. A doc string is basically written to explain why the function exists. What is the purpose of the function? Why was this function created? What parameters it accepts? And what is the return value? So it is nothing but a comment. It can span across multiple lines, but what it defines is what I'm taking is an input, what processing or what functionality the function is going to do, and what value is going to be returned by the function. So let's move ahead. So that is the doc string, which is a comment. And The next point is that the code block within every function starts with a colon and is indented. So the function has a colon at the end of the function definition. It defines or it starts a function, and all the lines which are there inside of the function are indented by a tab. That is how a function is defined, with a colon at the end and an indented block of code. Let's look at the last rule. The last rule says that the statement return expression exits a function, optionally passing back an expression to the caller. A return statement with no arguments is the same as return none. So we must have a return statement at the end of a function in Python, and a return statement will return a value back to the caller. So in our degree to Celsius case, we'll be returning back the value of the output of our formula, which is going to be 37.78778. So it is not going to be a static value. It is going to be a variable that will be defined. It will be calculated inside my function. It will be returned back as a value. So return statement defines an exit out of the function. So once the return statement is executed, it means that we are now going out of the function. And it will return the execution, or it will return the executor back to the place where the function was called from. Let's move ahead and see. By default, parameters have a positional behavior, and you need to inform them in the same order as the way they are defined. So the parameter list that is there inside the function is going to be a list of arguments or a list of variables which has to be maintained. And the call statement, when you pass the values in the function at the time of calling the function, are supposed to be in the same order in which the function is defined. There is another way where you can also write the names of the variable and write an equal to, but that is a little bit of an advanced parameter passing technique. We will be looking at it at a later point in time. But the general rule is that if you have three parameters, A, B, and C, you'll have to pass the values for those parameters in the same order in which the function is defined. And once the function is defined, you can execute it by calling it from another function or directly from the Python prompt. So there is an example of how to define a Python function. So there is a Python definition, greetings. We have a docstring which explains what this does. This is a docstring of greetings function, and it prints hello world, and then it returns back without returning any value. So the bracket is empty so that there aren't any parameters. The first line is a docstring and the function ends with a return statement. And when the function will be called, hello world will be printed on the screen. And here also we have another example of how we can call a function where we have defined a function def print me. So the name of the function is print me. Def signifies that it denotes that the function starts over here. str is an argument to the function. The docstring explains what this function is going to do. The docstring says that this prints a passed string into the function, and print str is going to print the string that is passed, and return is going to get the return. It is going to return the execution back to the place where it was called from. So where it was called from here. So print me, and the first call to the user defined function is going to call the function print me. This is an argument which is passed from the call. We can see that there is only one argument. There are no commas, and the argument is a string argument. It will get passed over to this variable str, and we are printing an str. And then we are calling the same function again with a different value. So whatever value is being passed to the str variable, it will get printed. So we will get these two lines printed on the screen. So we can see that when it is executed, we'll get this as the output. You can also edit and run. So if you edit and run, or you can open the compiler. So with edit and run, we'll be able to directly edit the code on the place. So we can change the value. And if we run it, it will print our value that we required. So this is an inbuilt edit and run or inbuilt Python execution available in tutorials point, using which you can directly execute your code as and when you're learning. Then the next topic is pass by reference or pass by value. So we will move on to the next topic in a future video. So this was a basic introductory video to Python functions. Hope you liked it. If you do like these videos, kindly consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.